So it's great to be here in person, as Jean-Claude said in introduction. I think that's been 3 years now since our previous on-site session. Lots of changes happen in organizations over the last 3 years, especially in our community. Now we are working sometimes fully remote or at least in a hybrid mode. So we used to collaborate using digital communication means and work online. So digital transformation was really in our way over the last 3 years. I like the theme around of this session of KM World around innovation, agility, and resilience, because it echoes a lot of the transformation that happened in organizations, especially in our organization. And today what I would like to do is to give you a sense of what we have been working on over the last 3 years and where we are heading to echo the different transformation that happened. So for those who do not know expert.ai, we are really focused on natural language and natural language understanding. So we are building AI technology in order to better understand the meaning behind textual information. That's what we have been doing since day one, and we have more than 30 years of experience in that field. It's a very interesting field that evolved a lot over the last few years. And I like the fact that the reason why we talk about knowledge management, there is knowledge embedded into a natural language process if you want to make it able to understand the meaning behind your content. So I refer to different experience we have. We always come back to what are the needs of our clients, practically speaking. I didn't put the logos here. You can find the stories. There are reference clients where we share the stories online if you're interested to know more. But we always come back to what really are the typical problems that we face in the enterprise, and I'm really fascinated to see the level of collaboration we can have in the enterprise, especially in companies that start to set up some knowledge management also functions, even in organizations that are not necessarily in the information industry, probably industry where this function started years ago. So let's talk about our journey since 2019, again coming back to when we had a last session that we had virtual events in between. So our goal has always been the same, but we saw an increase in what we call unlocking value of language data. So when we speak about language data, it's more unstructured data, textual information. It's another way to describe it. And we are tasked to help our organization building intelligent applications that can revolve on use this type of unstructured data. So we saw an increase over the last 3 years in the digital transformations for obvious reasons due to a pandemic, but also focusing on better knowledge sharing across the workforce, making sure that people can have access to right information, can be trained even if they are working remotely, for instance. Also modernizing existing workflows, making sure that things can be sometimes automated, or at least bringing additional support to different users in the organization. Also, we see an increase in the AI strategies. I mean, AI is in every mouth in all the executive teams in organizations, and I think it's interesting to see the maturity also behind it. It's not just we need AI because everybody is doing it, so we need to understand what AI can really do for us, practically speaking, to help us in our industry. So overall, for us, it has been 3 years of transformation, and we really put our energy in innovating in our product. And again, coming back to the 3 themes of this year's session at KM World, the first innovation was really to look at investing what we call hybrid AI, and we'll come back to that later, and we have other sessions later today that describe what we call hybrid AI when it comes to natural language processing. Which is a combination of different techniques in order to that prove to be very much more efficient, and also bring the explainability that is needed for people to trust the machine. The other aspect is to be more agile. Instead of having to reinvent the wheel all the time, trying to bring knowledge that is already can be embedded into what we call knowledge models. These are not data models, these are knowledge models that include a lot of information about a certain industry, a certain domain that really helps jump-starting some applications. The other part, which is called, I think, resonates with the resilience, is how to make sure that you make sure everything can work together, and how you make sure you give access to subject matter experts or to data science teams who can collaborate on, with technology and bring the insights or validate or do some changes in order to make the system working well. So we built a glue between, around all the different techniques in order to give that access, these possibilities to the end users, which I think is essential to keep the user in the loop. So that has been done, a lot of transformation from a technical standpoint. I just wanted to, I mean, probably most of you have seen this kind of charts where basically technology, and especially when it comes to natural language processing or generation, evolved a lot, and we hear about different models from OpenAI and other organizations, BitScaler, that build monster models that try to be better than humans. And there are even some papers that put a threshold where human basically stands compared to the machine, and those models continue to scale and to have more and more parameters. So the question we ask ourselves, okay, that's interesting to see what science can do, what technology, how technology can evolve, but is this really something that is helpful for us or for our clients? So how do you adapt to domain-intensive application? How do you access and update the potential knowledge that is embedded? How do you understand how the system reacts and why it's making some, it's providing some outcomes? And the last thing is about the energy consumption. We heard that these models take a lot of processing power, which doesn't resonate well in the climate change concerns that we have right now. So we took a different approach, and this is the orientation we are taking right now, is to make sure that we can continue to innovate and transform our product in order to be more energy efficient, more transparent in the way you can rely on the technology, and in the end drives interesting outcomes. I mean, ultimately our clients don't really care about how we do it sometimes, they care about more the outcomes and how that really serves a certain purpose. And this is always what we are looking at. So we'll come back to these different pillars of our strategy right now, going towards what we call responsible AI, and we call this approach the green glass approach. So let's look at the first element. So we are very often asked to if we have benchmarks to compare with other technologies, because there are other players in that world. And it's mainly a reason to compare in terms of quality. Are we better? What is the main difference that we propose to the market? But one of the critical elements is that now we can look also at the carbon footprint behind it. How long does it take to really train the system? How long does it take to run it on customer data? So there are different public data available and benchmarks that exist. And we recently published a paper on the Towards Data Science website where we showcased the type of analysis that we've done on a legal data set. It's a classification task, so basically organizing content according to different categories. I think there are something like 100 different topics in it. And the goal was to compare, of course, the results with other models that are available, like Legal BERT, for instance, but also look at the carbon footprint. As you can see here, just by training the system, it took basically less than 1% of the time necessary for other big models to be trained, but to deliver results that are almost the same. Okay. So I think that's the point for us is to make sure that do we need to have all this processing power? Do we need to have all these parameters in order to make good analysis of textual information? And it just goes to also limiting our carbon footprint, but also for our clients to reducing the cost of accessing to the technology. Another aspect is we call it practical, meaning we want to look at real domain needs or client needs, and we want to make the platform efficient and reliable to solve these business problems. So being practical means reducing the effort it takes to maybe create and develop knowledge models in certain domains, potentially leverage existing information available, reduce the space maybe that we have to deal with the size of data sets we have to deal with in order to have good results ultimately, and fit practically to the problem. Maybe not boiling the ocean, but just trying to resolve simple tasks at a time. And so these are examples I'm mentioning here. We also have the success stories online. I already didn't put the client logos here, but when we look at building, supporting automation, building some robots to route emails, we look at different languages we have to face with the different topics that we have to understand. Ultimately, we can help creating and supporting the creation of those robots. The same way we can also build more knowledge discovery applications, like in this case for a space agency. So to talk about practicality, I wanted to share a recent story, and I want to warmly thank Isaka. I know some people from Isaka in the room, and especially Evan Duval, who is the director of content engagement, who has been keen at accepting that we share this story with you today. For those who do not know Isaka, that's an international professional association focused on IT governance. And as you know, the pace of change in technology is very fast. And Isaka is offering to all these members, I think they have more than 160,000 members over the world, across the world, access to resources and information around IT governance, control, risk, security, and so on. So the goal is for them to make sure that their members can access relevant information that will help us bridging gaps in what they call the digital trust. How do you trust a machine? How do you trust information you see online? You trust the access to the information. And there are many aspects that IT organization, IT teams need to deal with. So they promote this digital trust framework, and there are different, say, big topics in there that I'm showing here. We started a collaboration with Isaka only in February of this year. So I think it was interesting for us to look also at the type of work that was necessary to help them building a new offering. It's not yet fully released, so be abreast of changes that will happen on their website, but they're really working on this transformation. And after 6-8 months of collaboration, we already have interesting results that will be soon part of their new offering. So typical work we are doing here that, again, the goal is to deliver information or technology experts with the right information when they need them, especially around digital trust and regarding all the different topics that I listed before. And so what we are building is topic enrichment, so classification, if you want, of their content. So there are two different aspects in this transformation. First of all, is to build a taxonomy that represents IT governance in general, and again, matching all the big topics that we've seen before, but also modifying their content so that we can run the indexation and the classification on snippets of information, so that instead of having to read full PDFs and reports and governance recommendations, you have directly the access to the information that you need. Now, that's really in support to their end users and to the community. So it's kind of, if you want, having a topic identification at a very granular level compared to at the aggregated book level or full document. Just to illustrate the taxonomy that we have done, that's still a work in progress, but we reached pretty good quality. I know I'm running out of time, so I will speed up. Sorry for that. So last thing I wanted to share is we need to be transparent as well when we in this approach of our green glass approach to responsible AI. One of the things is just to come back to a proof. How do you trust the system if you don't have access to the evidences? How do you trust the system if you can't interpret the results? And or if you can't change the insights or the outcomes that it produces. So we look at this approach. I want to share a quick view on one application that we designed recently to support what we call epidemic intelligence. We all heard about Monkeypox recently, another outbreak that has been presented by, communicated by WHO's director recently in July, when it became an outbreak that will have international consequences. And so one of our clients, who is a prestigious medical journal, asked us if we can collect more information about monkeypox and if we can find additional information for them so that they can support their editors, ultimately their researchers. So we looked at the trend and the different sources. So we monitored 700 news sources. We also monitored all the publications. We did a very high-level indexing of this data in order to locate and isolate information that is related to monkeypox. And you can see that even if there is an outbreak, certainly there are much more publications, we still have information coming from 10 years ago and published already in PubMed, for instance. The same goes for trials. So quickly, we design a workflow where we look at all those sources, we index everything, we store the knowledge that is extracted. So there is really knowledge extracted for knowledge discovery purposes. What are the connections we make between different type of diseases, treatments, symptoms, and everything we can capture that may be interesting to look at and to connect together. So one of the results, everything has been fed into a knowledge base, and with graph analytics applications, we can look at the results, and we see two main networks, if you're on that surface, between the virus on the right and a drug on the left that is known to treat smallpox today, that also could be used to treat monkeypox. It's not yet approved, but it has been authorized in some cases. When we zoom in, we start to see more relations together. So we look again at potential treatments, risk factors, things that have been coming from different cases. So the point here is, how do we trust this kind of networks? Okay, it's always something that seems interesting to see the connections, but how can we come back to the evidences? And so what you see summarized underneath are basically the type of connections that have been found. And on the right, these are the evidences taken from the publications, the news, and other papers. We also come to the point that we highlight how we do it, so meaning what we interpreted, what the system understood, and how it makes the connection. The last element, which is probably the most important, is keeping the human in the loop. So we don't design those tools if we don't have a way for experts and data science teams to use the application to make some changes, to share their point of view, to share their feedback. So the whole point is to make sure that they can scale up, we can adapt the tools to the experts. We can ultimately accelerate the goals to create products faster. And we enable in the end, and we equip the subject matter experts and the data science teams with different types of tools that they can manipulate without having to do any coding. I will stop here. I know I'm running out of time. Thank you for that. If you want to know more, we have a booth in the exhibition hall. We have the chance today to have the visit of our group CEO, so we welcome you at the booth for further discussion. Thank you.